The Stoic chooses freedom over comfortable captivity. Another trap is emotional obedience. Someone insults you. Immediately you become angry. Someone ignores you. Immediately you become anxious. Someone praises you. Immediately you become excited. Notice something. Your emotions are being controlled by other people. The Stoics trained themselves differently. Instead of reacting instantly, they paused. Between every event and every reaction exists a space. Inside that space lives your freedom. Most people never use it. The Stoic lives inside it. A soldier once trained under an old commander. Every day the commander insulted him. The young soldier became frustrated. Finally he shouted, "Why do you keep treating me this way?" The commander answered, "Because your enemy will do worse." Months later during battle, enemies mocked him, threatened him, and tried to provoke him. He remained calm. Nothing shook his focus. His greatest weapon wasn't his sword. It was his self-control. Life constantly tests your emotional discipline. Those who master themselves cannot easily be manipulated. Remember this. Not every request deserves obedience. Not every opinion deserves attention. Not every criticism deserves a response. Sometimes the strongest action is quiet refusal. Sometimes the greatest courage is simply walking away. Sometimes the most powerful sentence you'll ever say is, "No." And when you begin saying that word with calm confidence instead of guilt, you'll discover something remarkable. The people who truly respect you will remain. The ones who only wanted control will disappear. That isn't loss. That's clarity. Most people believe they are making their own choices. But if you look closely, many of those choices were made long before they ever thought about them. Society tells them what success should look like. Friends tell them what is considered normal. Social media tells them what is attractive. Fear tells them what is safe. Little by little, they stop listening to their own conscience and begin following the loudest voice around them. The Stoics warned against this kind of life. A person who follows every crowd will eventually lose sight of the path that truly belongs to them. There was once a shepherd who guided his sheep through the hills every day. One afternoon, a young sheep noticed another flock running toward a steep cliff. Without thinking, it began to follow them. The shepherd quickly grabbed it before it reached the edge. Confused, the sheep looked back and realized something terrible. The flock it was following wasn't running because they knew the way. They were simply following one another. Sometimes the crowd isn't leading you toward success. Sometimes it's leading you toward disaster. The courage to think for yourself is one of the greatest forms of freedom. Marcus Aurelius spent every day surrounded by powerful people. Generals wanted influence. Politicians wanted favors. Citizens demanded impossible things. Yet he constantly reminded himself that doing what is right matters far more than being accepted. That lesson still applies today. You don't need everyone's approval. You need your own respect. Ask yourself a difficult question. How many dreams have you abandoned because someone laughed? How many opportunities have you ignored because someone doubted you? How many times have you remained silent simply to avoid criticism? Every one of those moments teaches your mind to become smaller. The Stoic does the opposite. Each act of courage teaches the mind to become stronger. A young artist spent years hiding his paintings because his relatives mocked his passion. They said art would never pay the bills. Ashamed, he locked every canvas inside a small room. One day an old traveler visited his home and accidentally discovered the paintings. He stood silently, looking at each one. Finally he smiled and said, "The saddest prison isn't built from stone. It's built from fear." Those words changed the artist forever. He stopped asking for permission. He began sharing his work with the world. Some people still criticized him. Others admired him. But none of that mattered anymore. For the first time, he was living honestly. That is the Stoic way. You cannot control applause. You cannot control criticism. You can only control whether you remain true to yourself. Another invisible form of obedience is the need to explain every decision. You decide to protect your peace. People ask why. You choose to leave a toxic relationship. People demand an explanation. You refuse to participate in unnecessary drama. People call you cold. Soon you feel pressured to defend every choice you make. But wisdom doesn't require endless explanations. Sometimes silence is the clearest answer. Imagine a mountain standing beneath the sky. Birds fly over it. Storms strike it. Travelers admire it. Others ignore it completely. Yet the mountain never argues about its existence. It simply stands. That is quiet strength. Not every accusation deserves your defense. Not every misunderstanding needs correction. People will often believe whatever fits the story they've already created. The Stoic accepts this reality instead of fighting it. There was once an old fisherman known for his calm nature. One morning another fisherman falsely accused him of stealing fish. The crowd immediately began whispering. They expected anger. They expected shouting. Instead, the old man quietly untied his boat and sailed away. Weeks later the truth came out. The accusation had been a lie. Someone asked him why he never defended himself. He smiled gently and replied, "Truth doesn't become stronger because I shout louder." That kind of calm is rare. It comes from deep confidence. People who know who they are don't panic every time someone misunderstands them. One of the greatest chains is the fear of disappointing people. You may spend years carrying responsibilities that were never yours. You solve everyone's problems. You sacrifice your own peace. You constantly place yourself last. Eventually, exhaustion becomes your normal. The Stoics taught that helping others is honorable. Destroying yourself to satisfy everyone is not. You cannot pour water from an empty cup. A candle cannot light another if its own flame has gone out. Protecting your energy isn't selfish. It's necessary. Think about a blacksmith forging a sword. He doesn't strike the metal endlessly. He knows exactly when to stop. Too much force weakens the blade. Too little force leaves it unfinished. Wisdom is knowing the right balance. Your life needs that same balance. Give generously. Love deeply. Work honestly. But never surrender your identity simply to keep everyone comfortable. Because the moment you abandon yourself, no one else can give you back the life you lost. The Stoics believe that every morning offers a choice. Will you obey fear? Or will you obey reason? Will you chase approval? Or will you chase virtue? Will you allow the world to control your emotions? Or will you become master of your own mind? Every sunrise asks those questions again. Every sunset reveals your answer. Remember this. Strength isn't loud. Freedom isn't given. Respect isn't begged for. They are earned every time you choose principles over pressure. Every time you refuse to betray your values, you become a little harder to manipulate. A little calmer under pressure. A little freer than you were yesterday. And that is exactly how ordinary people become unshakable. There comes a moment in every person's life when they must make a choice. Will you continue living according to other people's expectations? Or will you finally begin living according to your own principles? That moment rarely arrives with celebration. It usually arrives disguised as discomfort. You lose a friend because you refuse to be manipulated. You walk away from a relationship that constantly drained your peace. You leave a place where your values were ignored. At first, it feels like loss. But with time, you realize you didn't lose your freedom. You found it. The Stoics understood that growth almost always begins with letting go. Just as a tree releases its old leaves before new ones appear, a wise person releases unhealthy attachments before discovering a better life. There was once an old gardener who planted two young trees side by side. One tree was tied tightly to a wooden pole for many years. The other was allowed to sway freely in the wind. Visitors believed the tied tree looked stronger because it stood perfectly straight. Then one violent storm arrived. The tied tree snapped where the rope had weakened it. The free tree bent with the wind and remained standing. The gardener smiled and said, "Strength is not created by constant control. It is created by learning to stand on your own." Many people have been tied to invisible ropes. The rope of approval. The rope of fear. The rope of guilt. The rope of comparison. The rope of always trying to make everyone happy. These ropes seem harmless at first. But over time they weaken your confidence. They convince you that you cannot stand without someone else's permission. The Stoic cuts those ropes. Not with anger. Not with rebellion. But with wisdom. Another habit you must stop obeying is comparison. Comparison quietly steals joy. You see someone else's success and suddenly your own progress feels meaningless. You see another person's possessions and forget everything you've already built. You begin racing against lives that were never meant to be yours. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself to focus on his own work instead of constantly looking at what others were doing. Your path is different. Your timing is different. Your struggles are different. So why compare chapters when everyone is writing a different story? Imagine two runners entering a marathon. One spends the entire race looking sideways at everyone else. The other keeps his eyes fixed on the finish line. Who is more likely to reach the end? The answer is obvious. Focus creates progress. Comparison creates distraction. The same is true in life. A young apprentice once worked under a master sculptor. Every day he became discouraged because his statues looked nothing like his teacher's masterpieces. One afternoon the master handed him a rough block of stone and said, "This stone doesn't need to become my sculpture. It only needs to become yours." Those words changed everything. The apprentice stopped competing. He started improving. Years later people admired his work, not because it looked like someone else's, but because it reflected his own unique skill. Your greatest competition is the person you were yesterday. No one else. The world will always tempt you to chase more. More money. More praise. More attention. More possessions. The Stoics asked a different question. How much is enough? A man once filled his home with expensive treasures. Yet every night he worried someone would steal them. His neighbor owned very little. He slept peacefully. Who was richer? The answer wasn't measured by wealth. It was measured by peace. Anything you cannot lose without losing yourself has become your master. That is why the Stoics practiced gratitude. Gratitude reminds you that your happiness doesn't depend on endless accumulation. It depends on appreciating what already exists. One final form of obedience is the habit of waiting. Waiting until conditions are perfect. Waiting until fear disappears. Waiting until everyone believes in you. Waiting until tomorrow. The truth is simple. Tomorrow becomes next week. Next week becomes next year. Years pass. Dreams remain unfinished. Life rewards action, not endless preparation. There is an old story about a sailor who spent decades repairing his boat. Every board had to be perfect. Every rope had to be flawless. Every sail had to be inspected again and again. One morning he walked to the harbor ready to begin his journey. But he was old. His strength was gone. His ship had never left the shore. Perfection had stolen his life. Don't make the same mistake. You do not need perfect conditions to begin becoming stronger. You only need the courage to take one step. Then another. Then another. That is how confidence is built. Not through thinking. Through doing. Every day you refuse to obey fear, you grow stronger. Every day you refuse to obey doubt, you grow wiser. Every day you refuse to obey unhealthy expectations, you become freer. Eventually people will notice something different about you. They will wonder why criticism no longer shakes you. Why chaos no longer controls you. Why you remain calm when everyone else panics. They won't realize that your strength wasn't built overnight. It was built one decision at a time. One boundary at a time. One act of courage at a time. This is the Stoic path. Not the path of arrogance. Not the path of selfishness. But the path of inner freedom. The path of living according to reason instead of fear. The path of choosing virtue over approval. The path of becoming impossible to manipulate because your mind belongs to you. As you leave this video today, remember these words. Stop obeying fear. Stop obeying guilt. Stop obeying opinions that steal your peace. Stop obeying the voice that says you are not enough. Instead, obey wisdom. Obey courage. Obey discipline. Obey your highest values. Because the day you stop living for everyone else's approval is the day you finally begin living for yourself. If this message inspired you, subscribe to Stoic Ascension for more powerful lessons on Stoicism, share your thoughts in the comments about what you will stop obeying starting today, and share this video with someone who needs this reminder.